My name is Nana May, and I never thought a simple card could start a war in my own home. It all began one ordinary afternoon. I was in the kitchen, humming softly while preparing lunch, when my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. "Mom, I think there's a problem," he said, sounding anxious. I frowned. "Problem? What kind of problem?" He sighed. "It's your card. We can't use it anymore." At first, I thought it was a technical glitch. "That's impossible," I said. I didn't change anything, but Daniel's voice was tense. "Mom, your password has changed. We can't pay for anything. I don't know what to do." My stomach sank, because I knew exactly what had happened. It was her, my daughter-in-law, the one who always believed that controlling finances meant controlling the family, the one who never wanted me to have a say in anything. And now she was furious. By the time I walked into the living room, she was pacing. "Really, Nana," she snapped, voice sharp. "You actually changed the password?" I looked at her calmly. "Yes," I said. "I did. Because you were using it inappropriately." Her eyes widened. "You can't do that," she shouted. Daniel looked at me nervously. "Mom, maybe we should just—" "No, Daniel," I interrupted gently. "This needs to be addressed now." She turned toward me fully, arms crossed. "You know what this feels like?" she demanded. "It feels like you're trying to humiliate me in front of your son." I shook my head slowly. "I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm protecting my son and my family. And that includes protecting my money from misuse." She laughed sharply, bitterly. "Oh, so suddenly you're the moral compass? The family accountant?" "Yes," I replied softly. "And someone had to be." She stared at me, disbelief etched across her face. I can't believe this," she said. "You've always been nice to me. But now this?" I paused, and I realized something important. She thought she owned this house. She thought she controlled the narrative. And the moment I changed the password, she lost it. I could see Daniel shifting uncomfortably between us. Maybe we should just go to the store and figure it out," he mumbled. "No," I said firmly. "This conversation needs to happen at home, where everyone can speak honestly." She scoffed, crossing her arms tighter. "Honestly," she asked, "you think this is about honesty? It's about respect. And you just disrespected me." I felt a flash of anger, but I kept my voice calm. Respect is mutual. Using my card without permission isn't respect. Changing the password to protect what's mine is responsible. Her lip trembled, a mix of frustration and rage. "You're impossible," she shouted, voice rising. "Do you even understand what it's like to be married to my son?" Daniel winced. I noticed his discomfort, but I refused to let this shift focus away from the real issue. Boundaries. I sat down slowly, meeting her gaze. "Yes," I said softly, "I understand marriage. I also understand responsibility. And using someone else's resources without asking? That's not marriage. That's entitlement." She opened her mouth to respond, but I continued. "I didn't change the password to hurt you. I changed it to teach you a lesson." Her eyes widened. "Lesson," she repeated. "Yes," I said firmly. "You need to learn that respect is not automatic. It's earned. And sometimes it's enforced." Her face turned red. "You can't just," she began, but I cut her off. "Watch me," I said. Daniel looked between us, frozen. Maybe this is too much," he whispered. I shook my head. "No, not too much. Necessary." Then I saw it. A small pause in her anger. A crack in the armor she had built. She realized that I wasn't intimidated. And in that pause, I knew the first reversal of power had arrived. I leaned back, calm and collected, while she fumed, trying to process that the woman she thought would bend refused to. That night, she whispered to Daniel, "Mom can't do this. She can't control everything." And I realized something chilling. This was only the beginning. Because she would escalate. She would try to take revenge. I smiled faintly. Let her rage simmer. Let her think she had the upper hand. Because the next move would be mine. I didn't think a simple grocery trip could become a battlefield. But when my daughter-in-law realized she couldn't use my card, it exploded. It was Saturday morning. Daniel had gone to work early, leaving me and her alone. She had texted, asking if we could go shopping together. I agreed. not knowing it would become the most uncomfortable 2 hours of my life. We arrived at the supermarket, and immediately tension crackled in the air. She picked up a cart, humming casually, pretending everything was normal. I followed, quietly observing. The first sign of trouble came in the produce aisle. "Mom," she said, voice deceptively sweet, "I think we should grab these expensive strawberries, too." I smiled faintly. "Of course," I said, "but I'll pay this time. We can't use the card." Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Oh, right," she said, voice clipped. "I forgot. You changed the password." I nodded calmly. "Yes, that's right." I watched her carefully. Every step, every glance, every forced smile. She was furious, and she wanted me to know it. We moved down the aisles. She picked up items, piled them high, and then stopped at the checkout. I scanned her face as she tried to hand me the card. She had hoped I'd relent. She had hoped I'd let her use it anyway. But I didn't. I placed my hand on the card. "No," I said softly. "You'll have to use your own money." Her face turned red instantly. Her lips pressed tightly together. "You are unbelievable," she whispered, venom barely restrained. I leaned back slightly. "I'm not unbelievable. I'm responsible." She stomped her foot. I nearly smiled. She had lost control, and she hated it. At the checkout, she tried a different tactic. "Mom, please. Just this once. It's only a few items." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. Fear that her authority, her manipulation, her control was slipping. "No," I said again. Firm. Unyielding. "This isn't about a few items. It's about respect." She froze, realizing that her usual tactics, pleading, charm, excuses, weren't working. She tried one last approach. "You're embarrassing me in front of Daniel. You're making me look bad." I paused. "Darling," I said softly, "the only person you're embarrassing is yourself." Her jaw dropped. Shock replaced rage for a fleeting second. Then it returned. The cashier looked between us nervously. I could feel the tension in the line, the whispers of other shoppers. She leaned closer to me, whispering in a stage voice meant for the crowd. "Mom, you don't get to control everything. You're not the only adult here." I met her gaze calmly. "Yes," I said quietly, "and yet here we are. And I am still the one setting boundaries." She glanced around, realizing some people were staring. Her voice dropped to a low hiss. "I can't believe you're doing this." I smiled faintly. Believe it. The worst part for her? I wasn't angry. I wasn't raising my voice. I was calm, collected, unshakable, and that drove her insane. By the time we left the supermarket, she hadn't said a word. Not a single word. Her hands trembled slightly as she loaded the bags into the car. Dana would have been proud if he'd seen it. I had won without yelling, without forcing her hand, simply by holding firm. But the victory was short-lived. Later that evening, she cornered Daniel in the living room. "I can't believe your mom did this to me," she shouted. "She's ridiculous. Why does she have to control everything?" Daniel, caught between us, stammered. I didn't know she'd." She interrupted him. "She's trying to make me look bad. Everyone will think I'm irresponsible." I stood silently nearby, listening. Her words were meant to provoke me, to make me angry, to lose control. But I stayed calm. Later that night, I reflected on the day, on how she had tried to manipulate every situation, on how Daniel had watched, confused and uncomfortable, and on how, for the first time, she realized she couldn't push me around anymore. And then I realized the next problem. She wasn't done. She would escalate, try to humiliate me further, try to turn the family against me. I smiled faintly. Let her try, because I had learned something that day. That day, boundaries could not only stop her, they could humiliate her instead. I knew she wouldn't give up so easily. After the supermarket incident, my daughter-in-law went quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that screams plotting. That evening, Daniel was distracted. "I'm just trying to keep the peace," he said softly. "I don't want her upset." I shook my head. "Daniel, peace doesn't exist when one person is hiding the truth. And hiding the truth is exactly what she's doing." She had left the room after the argument at the grocery store, her jaw tight, her hands clenched. But I noticed something else. A small envelope she had left on the counter. Accidentally, I thought. Curiosity pricked my fingers, and I opened it carefully. Inside, receipts, bank statements, credit card slips. My stomach sank. It wasn't just minor spending. It wasn't just shopping trips. She had been using my card for months. Expensive dinners, luxury items, trips, and she had cleverly disguised them so Daniel never noticed. I sat down slowly. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, not because of the money, but because she had treated my generosity as a weapon, a tool to manipulate, and a way to assert control over my son. When Daniel returned home that night, I confronted him gently. "Have you noticed anything unusual about your card statements?" I asked. He frowned. Well, some things seemed higher than usual, but I thought maybe it was the bills. I shook my head. "No, Daniel. Someone has been taking advantage of your trust." His eyes widened. "Mom, you don't mean..." I handed him the envelope. "Look for yourself." He flipped through the statements slowly. His face turned pale. "Mom, this can't be right." I trusted her. I nodded, my throat tight. And that trust was used to deceive both of us. Later that night, she returned home. I was sitting in the living room, calm as ever. She walked in, sensing the tension. "Mom," she said cautiously, "we should talk." I looked at her. Indeed we should. About the card. About the spending. About the trust you thought you could manipulate. Her face changed. Fear flickered in her eyes. "Mom, it's not what you think." I shook my head. "Oh, I think exactly what I see. And now Daniel knows too." Daniel stepped forward, voice trembling. "How could you? After everything she's done for you. After she changed the password to protect us. And you've been using her money." Her hands shook. I needed it for things." I interrupted gently but firmly. "No, you don't get to justify this. You don't get to manipulate generosity for personal gain." Her voice grew louder, defensive. "You think you're perfect? You're not the only adult here. I contribute. I work. I deserve this." I leaned in slightly, calm and unshakable. Contributing doesn't mean taking. Working doesn't mean stealing. Respect doesn't mean entitlement. And this, I tapped the envelope, is not acceptable behavior in my home. Her face flushed red, the heat of embarrassment mixing with rage. "I can't believe you're making a scene," she shouted. I smiled faintly. "The scene is already made. You just didn't expect to be the center of it." Daniel looked between us, stunned. I don't know what to say," he muttered. I put a hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to say anything. Just understand that honesty is more important than comfort." The rest of the evening was a storm of tension. She tried pleading, apologizing, explaining, but every word, every attempt made the situation worse. I realized something crucial that night. Humiliation isn't just public. It's private. And watching her unravel, powerless, in front of the family she hoped to control, that was more effective than any shouting match. The next morning, I took action. I called the bank, changed the card entirely, set strict alerts. When she discovered it, the fury returned. "Mom, what did you do now?" she shrieked. "You can't just..." I met her gaze calmly. "Darling, the lesson isn't over. And this time there will be no loopholes." She stomped out of the room, muttering. Daniel shook his head. "I don't even recognize her anymore," he whispered. I sighed. "She's only showing you who she really is. And it's better to see it now than later." Later that evening, a friend stopped by unexpectedly. "You seem tense," she said kindly. I nodded. "Yes, family matters. Trust. Money. Boundaries." She looked at me with wide eyes. "Wow, I don't know how you handle it so calmly." I smiled faintly, because losing control is never an option, especially when someone is trying to manipulate everything around them. And as I watched the sunset that evening, I realized one truth. This battle over a card was just the beginning, because the next move would be hers, and she would escalate. But I was ready. I had the evidence. I had control. And most importantly, I had the calm to watch her make the next mistake. I should have known she wouldn't stop with just the card. By Thursday, she had escalated. Small digs, snide comments, subtle manipulation. But I could see the bigger plan forming. It all came to a head that evening during a small family gathering. Daniel had invited a few close friends over. Nothing extravagant, just an ordinary night. I had spent the afternoon preparing snacks and drinks, humming quietly in the kitchen, trying to stay calm. She arrived with a bright smile, too bright, like a cat hiding claws beneath velvet paws. "Hi everyone," she said cheerfully. "Sorry I'm late." I smiled politely. Inside, I was already ready for what she had planned. The first sign came almost immediately. She tried to steer everyone's attention to the luxurious appetizers on the table. "Mom, these are nice, but I thought we could have a few more gourmet items," she said. Her tone was casual, but the underlying jab was clear. "Your effort is never enough." I kept calm. "Thank you, darling," I said softly. "But I think what's here will be perfect for everyone." Daniel's friends exchanged glances. The tension was subtle, but it was there. She had hoped to make me look small, to show off her control. Then she tried the next move, the subtle humiliation. She dropped a small line, loud enough for the guests to hear. "Oh, I thought we'd use my card for some of this. Mom changed the password, so I guess we'll manage." I paused, smiled faintly, and continued arranging the drinks. Guests tensed. They sensed the undercurrent. Daniel's face went pale. Mom changed the password," he stammered. "Yes," I said quietly, meeting her gaze. "Because boundaries are important. And using someone else's money without asking is not acceptable." Her lips pressed together, furious. "You really don't get it, do you?" she hissed. "You've embarrassed me in front of everyone." I turned to the guests. "Darling," I said softly, "sometimes truth is embarrassing when it's long overdue." A hush fell over the room. She tried to recover with forced laughter. "Oh well, I guess I misjudged the situation." But it was too late. Her face betrayed panic and shame. She was losing control. Daniel finally spoke, his voice shaky. "You've been using my mom's card?" Her eyes widened, panic rising. It was for important things," she said. I interrupted calmly. "Important things don't justify deception." Her defense crumbled further. She glanced at the snacks, the drinks, the table she had tried to shame me over earlier. And in that moment, everyone could see it. Her attempt to dominate the evening had failed. Her strategy of subtle humiliation had backfired spectacularly. She left the room, muttering, "I can't believe this. I'll show them." Daniel sighed. I didn't realize how manipulative she could be," he whispered. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You needed to see the truth for yourself, and now you have." But the evening wasn't over. Later, while she was alone in the kitchen, she tried another tactic, emotional manipulation. "You know, Mom," she said softly, "I'm only trying to make life better for Daniel. You're just making everything worse." I smiled faintly. "You mean making it better for yourself?" Her face twisted in anger and embarrassment. How dare you?" I leaned closer. "Darling, control is earned through respect, not through deceit. And using someone else's money to assert power is never acceptable." She left the kitchen abruptly, slamming the door behind her. The guests murmured in surprise. Even Daniel looked uneasy. Later that night, I discovered something shocking. She had been hiding secret debts. The credit card statements weren't just for shopping sprees. They were covering unpaid bills, loans she had never disclosed to Daniel or me. I sat down quietly, reviewing the papers. Her lies weren't just about money. They were about trust. Her manipulation ran deep, and she had underestimated me completely. The next morning, I made a decision. This wasn't just about the card anymore. It was about protecting my son, the household, and the truth. I called Daniel into the living room. "Daniel," I said quietly, "we need to talk about your wife's debts and her spending habits." The card was just the tip of the iceberg. He looked shocked. I had no idea." "I know," I said, "but now we have to deal with it honestly. No more hiding, no more excuses." When she returned later that day, she was confronted directly. I held the stack of papers in my hand. "Darling, we need to discuss your finances and your secrets." Her face went pale. She stumbled for words. It's not what it looks like." I shook my head. "Yes, It is exactly what it looks like. And it's time to take responsibility. Her mother called the next day. She said softly, "You've embarrassed my daughter. You're too harsh." I smiled faintly. Harsh? No. Honest. And honesty is the only way she'll ever learn. That evening, Daniel said quietly, "Mom, I didn't know she had been hiding so much." I can't believe it. I placed my hand over his. It's better you see it now than later. And it's better she learns the consequences today. I realized something important. Boundaries aren't just about rules. They're about teaching lessons. And humiliation, subtle, private, truthful, can be the most effective teacher. I smiled faintly as I watched her leave the room, trembling and defeated. This battle over money and deceit wasn't over. But I knew one thing. The next time she tried to manipulate, I would be ready. And this time, it wouldn't just be about money. The tension at home had been simmering for days. After the supermarket incident and the small party fiasco, my daughter-in-law was boiling quietly, plotting her next move. I could feel it in the way she lingered in rooms, her eyes darting at me like a cat watching a bird. That Friday evening, Daniel suggested a family dinner. "Mom, it'll be good to eat together, just us and a few relatives," he said softly. "I think it might lighten the mood." I agreed, not because I expected peace, but because I knew that the next battle would happen there, in front of witnesses. She arrived first, with that same false smile, carrying a bottle of wine and a dessert. "Hi everyone," she chirped too brightly. "Thought I'd help set the table." I smiled politely, inside bracing myself. This wasn't just about the card anymore. It was about power, respect, and control over Daniel's perception. The relatives arrived slowly, unaware of the undercurrent. At first, everything seemed calm, but I knew the storm was coming. Dinner began innocently enough. We talked about the weather, the kids at school, weekend plans. She smiled, laughed at the right moments, poured wine for the guests. And then the first strike. She leaned slightly toward Daniel, lowering her voice just enough for the table to hear. "You know, Mom changed the card password, so I had to pay for the groceries myself. It was inconvenient." I looked up from my plate, calm. "Yes," I said softly, meeting her gaze. "Boundaries can be inconvenient, but they are necessary." Her smile faltered. I could see the first flicker of panic in her eyes. She tried to recover with humor. "Oh well, I guess it's character building." A forced laugh. The relatives glanced between us, sensing tension. Even Daniel's sister raised her eyebrows, quietly amused. I didn't react. I let the silence hang, because the truth was always louder than words. Her next move was desperate. She began to subtly criticize the dishes. The chicken is a little dry, don't you think?" She flicked a glance at me, her voice loud enough to make the remark unavoidable. I smiled faintly. "Thank you for the feedback. I'll remember that next time." The guests murmured politely. Some suppressed smiles. Others, like Daniel, looked uncomfortable. She tried a bigger move. "My mom always knows how to cook. But maybe next time we should order in. It would save time and be more convenient." I set my fork down. Calm, slow, deliberate. Convenient is one thing. Respect is another. And in this home, respect matters more than convenience. Her face flushed red. You're impossible," she whispered under her breath. I looked at her quietly. "You made that very clear to Daniel when you tried to use my card. And yet, you still test boundaries. Why is that?" Her jaw tightened. She looked away, glaring at her plate, furious but powerless. Daniel shifted in his chair. I don't know what to say," he muttered. I put a hand on his arm. "You don't need to say anything. Just see it for what it is." The next humiliation came unexpectedly. She reached for the wine bottle she had brought. "I thought I'd contribute something," she said, trying to sound casual. I smiled faintly. "Yes, darling, I noticed. But contributions only matter if they're honest and transparent. And your spending habits tell a different story." Her hands trembled. She dropped the bottle slightly, and it rattled against the table. The guests flinched. Even Daniel looked shocked. You're embarrassing me," she whispered fiercely. "Yes," I said softly. "The truth often embarrasses those who rely on lies." By dessert, she was visibly shaken. Her confident smile had vanished, her posture stiff, her hands jittery, and I realized she had completely lost control. Later, in the living room, she cornered Daniel. "You should have defended me," she hissed. "I'm your wife. Why did your mom?" Daniel shook his head. I just saw the truth," he said quietly. "I can't ignore it anymore." She glared at me from across the room. You're destroying our marriage." I smiled faintly. "No, I'm protecting it. And I'm protecting my family from deception." That night, after everyone had left, I reviewed the receipts and statements again. The debts she had accumulated in secret, the way she had tried to hide them. It was shocking, and the realization hit me. She hadn't just misused my card. She had been planning to manipulate the family finances long term, relying on secrecy and lies. I decided then, the next step would be exposure. Not shouting, not public humiliation, but a calm, undeniable revelation of the truth. Because that was the only way she would learn. Deception has consequences, and I smiled faintly, because by the end of this story she would never underestimate me again. The calm after the dinner fiasco was temporary. I knew she wasn't done. The silence in the house was heavy with plotting, and her glances at me? Sharp, calculating, full of unspoken threats. That Saturday morning, she approached Daniel quietly. "Maybe we should talk to Mom together," she whispered, trying to make him feel like an ally. I watched from the kitchen, pretending not to hear. Let her try, because any misstep would reveal more than she intended. Later, when Daniel left to run errands, she made her move. She cornered me in the living room. "Mom, you're going too far," she said sharply, changing the card password. "Humiliating me at dinner, it's cruel." I leaned back calmly. "Darling, it's not cruel. It's the truth. And sometimes the truth is more powerful than anger or manipulation." Her eyes narrowed. "You're impossible," she whispered. I smiled faintly. "No, I'm consistent." Then, the first shocking revelation slipped out. Her past. She had never mentioned it before. Not her debts, not her previous financial problems. And suddenly, in frustration, she let a piece of it escape. "My family, we didn't have much," she said quietly. "I've had to fight for everything I've gotten." I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. Because the more she spoke, the more she revealed and the more vulnerable she became. "You think I'm greedy," she continued. "You think I'm manipulative, but you don't know what it's like to be ignored, dismissed, to always be second." I nodded slowly. I understand struggle. But struggle doesn't give you the right to deceive. It doesn't give you the right to undermine your family. Her hands trembled as she paced. You'll never understand." "Yes, I do," I said softly. "I know what it is to protect my family, to fight for what's right, and to hold people accountable." She stopped mid-step. Her eyes flicked at me, then down at the floor. And that's when the second shock hit. She had been hiding more than debts. There were emails, old contracts, even unpaid loans, all tangled in ways Daniel had no idea about. I didn't rush her. I didn't scold. I simply waited, because the next word she spoke would seal her humiliation. You'll never believe it," she said finally, her voice trembling. I borrowed money from people you'd never approve of." I raised an eyebrow. "People like?" She hesitated. Her mouth opened, then closed. "I can't say." I smiled faintly. "Darling, silence isn't going to help you here. The truth always comes out one way or another." Then she did the unthinkable. She stormed out of the room, grabbed her phone, and started texting. I listened carefully. Her words were sharp, urgent, desperate. "Tell them she's unreasonable. Tell them she's controlling. We need to turn this around. I can't let her win." I knew exactly who she was texting. Friends, relatives, even Daniel's colleagues. She was trying to manipulate the narrative outside the house. That's when I realized something critical. Her attempts to control weren't limited to the home. She wanted to control the perception of everyone around us. I made a quiet decision. The next step wouldn't just be about money. It wouldn't just be about humiliation. It would be about exposure, revealing everything she was trying to hide. That evening, Daniel returned early. He found me calmly reviewing papers, bank statements, emails, receipts. All of it, I said softly. Every hidden transaction. Every attempt at manipulation. It's all here. He gasped. Mom, she really did all this? Yes, I said. She's been hiding things for months, trying to control everything. The card was just the first clue. Later, she returned home, unaware of what I had discovered. Daniel, Mom, she said nervously, I think we should just forget about it. I held up the stack of papers. No, we don't forget. We address it. Honestly. Completely. Her face went pale. Mom, you can't. I interrupted calmly, I already can. And I will. Daniel finally spoke, voice trembling. Mom, I don't even know what to say. I didn't know she had been hiding so much. I nodded. Better to know now than later. And better she learns the consequences before it's too late. By the end of the evening, she was visibly shaken. Her pride, carefully constructed over months of deceit, had collapsed. She had tried to manipulate, humiliate, and control, and failed spectacularly. I realized something important that night. The past is never truly hidden. Secrets always surface, and when they do, the truth can be devastating if you're unprepared. I smiled faintly as I watched her leave the room, trembling and defeated. She had underestimated me. She had underestimated the strength of a mother protecting her family, and that would be her biggest mistake. The house was unusually quiet that Sunday morning. I could feel the tension lingering in the air, thick and electric, like the calm before a storm. After the dinner showdown and the revelation of her hidden debts, my daughter-in-law was no longer hiding her frustration. She was simmering with desperation. Daniel had gone out to run errands, leaving the house empty except for the three of us, me, her, and the lingering ghosts of her past manipulations. She paced nervously, her heels clicking sharply on the wooden floor, muttering under her breath. I can't let her win. I can't. Her words were barely a whisper, yet they carried a dangerous energy. I remained seated at the kitchen table, calm and deliberate. I had already reviewed every credit card statement, every receipt, every hidden transaction she had ever attempted to cover. I knew her tactics, her patterns, and her desperation. She had underestimated me. This time, she would learn. Finally, she spoke directly to me, trying to appear composed. Mom, can we talk? I nodded slowly. Of course. Let's talk honestly. She smiled, too sweetly, and I knew that smile was dangerous. I've been thinking, she began carefully. Maybe we overreacted with the card incident. Maybe I should just apologize. Smooth things over. I leaned back, calm as ever, and watched her carefully. Her eyes flickered, betraying the calculation behind her words. You mean apologize without consequences? I asked softly. Her lips tightened. Yes, just let's make this disappear. I shook my head slowly. No, apologies without accountability mean nothing. In this situation, it needs to be addressed fully. Otherwise, nothing will change. Her shoulders slumped, but the storm inside her hadn't dissipated. It had only grown quieter, more dangerous. Later that afternoon, she tried something more aggressive. She reached out to a family friend, a woman I trusted completely. Her plan was clear: gather allies, manipulate perceptions, and make me appear controlling and unreasonable. I learned of it when the friend, unaware she was being used, called me with concern. Are you all right? The friend asked. She sounded frantic, upset, and I don't understand what's happening. I smiled faintly. Don't worry. I'm aware, and it won't work. That evening, she executed her plan. As Daniel returned home, she confronted him dramatically in the living room. Daniel, Mom is controlling everything. She's making me look bad in front of everyone. I entered quietly, observing as she raised her voice, trying to draw attention to herself. Daniel looked confused and concerned. I don't know, he stammered. You're both. I don't understand. She turned on me with fiery eyes. Mom, you can't just manipulate everyone like this. You're humiliating me. I shook my head slowly. Darling, manipulation is a choice. Deception is a choice. And trying to control perceptions with lies is a choice. You made that choice, and now the consequences are clear. Her jaw tightened. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed. Yes, I said softly. But cleverness without honesty is meaningless. The friends she had tried to recruit arrived, uninvited, unannounced, thinking they were helping her. Instead, they witnessed the calm, collected truth. The room grew quiet as I explained, gently but firmly, the entire situation. The card, the debts, the secret spending, and her manipulations. Her face went pale. She tried to interject, but her voice faltered. Every attempt to assert control crumbled before the evidence. By the end of the evening, she was humiliated, completely exposed in front of the family friend she had hoped to manipulate. Her desperate strategy had failed spectacularly. She retreated to the guest room, slamming the door behind her. Later, I reflected on her behavior. She had tried every tactic: charm, subtle humiliation, manipulation, and now alliances. Each attempt backfired, and the more desperate she became, the more mistakes she made. I realized then that desperation can be a dangerous weapon, but only if you control it. She had allowed her emotions to dictate her actions. Anger, jealousy, fear. They had clouded her judgment completely. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. It was short, sharp, and trembling with rage. You'll regret this. Everyone will see how controlling you are. I won't let you win. I smiled faintly. Yes, she would try again. But by now, I was ready for anything. That day, Daniel and I reviewed everything. Every financial statement, every email, every receipt. It's all here, I said. All of it. Nothing is hidden anymore. His face was pale, a mix of shock and understanding. I didn't realize she could do all this behind my back. I nodded slowly. That's why boundaries matter, and why honesty is always the best policy. Later, she returned from an errand, attempting to appear casual. Mom, I think we need to move past this, she said softly, trying to charm me again. I looked at her calmly. No, the past cannot be ignored, and if we want peace, it must be built on truth. Otherwise, the cycle will continue. Her face twitched with frustration. She realized she had lost again, publicly, privately, and even in her own mind. That night, I heard her talking quietly on the phone. She was furious, frantic, and desperate to regain control. But I knew the truth had already won. By the end of chapter 7, it was clear. She had underestimated me, underestimated the power of calm authority, and underestimated the fact that truth always exposes deception. And she had only one choice left: escalate further or finally admit defeat. I had begun to believe that my daughter-in-law's manipulations were slowing, that perhaps she had realized the truth would always prevail. But I was wrong. It started on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Daniel had gone to work, leaving the house in what I thought would be peaceful silence. She moved through the rooms like a shadow, quiet but purposeful. I felt the energy shift the moment she entered the living room. Something was coming. I was folding laundry when I heard her muttering, "Mom, you've gone too far. I can't let this continue. I need to do something before everyone sees how controlling you are." Her voice was low, dangerous. I set the laundry down, alert but calm. I had seen this behavior before. Calm on the surface, storm underneath. She picked up her phone and began texting furiously. I could see her fingers trembling. It wasn't panic, it was desperation. And in desperation, people make mistakes. By mid-afternoon, I realized she had hatched a plan. She intended to turn Daniel and the family against me, hoping to frame me as the unreasonable, controlling figure. I didn't panic. I knew the truth, and the truth is a weapon more powerful than any lie. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Daniel's cousin, Lisa, a sweet woman who always had a soft spot for him. "Hi, Nana May," she said cautiously. I got a text from your daughter-in-law. She said something about you and the card incident, and I don't know, it sounded serious." I smiled faintly. Yes, she's upset, but the story she's telling is not the full truth. The full truth will come out soon, and then everyone will understand. Lisa nodded slowly, uneasy. I didn't want to be in the middle. but she said she wanted everyone to think you were controlling. I nodded again, calm and collected. Let her try. Truth always finds its way. By the time Daniel returned home, the atmosphere in the house was tense. She approached him immediately, her voice carefully modulated, soft but dramatic. Daniel, Mom is trying to control everything. She's humiliating me, manipulating situations. I think everyone should know the truth. I stayed silent, observing. Daniel looked between us, confusion clear in his eyes. I don't understand, he muttered. She leaned in closer, attempting to create intimacy and urgency. You should have defended me, Daniel. She's trying to turn the family against me. I finally spoke, calm and firm. Darling, there is no need for defense. The only thing I am doing is revealing the truth. And it's better to face the truth than to live with deception. Her face twitched. Her eyes widened as she realized my words were immune to her manipulation. Then the next shock came. She had prepared a small packet of documents, hoping to frame me as controlling and unreasonable. Contracts, emails, and even a few manipulated receipts were carefully arranged to create the appearance of guilt on my part. She handed them to Daniel with a flourish, trying to appear innocent and reasonable. Daniel looked down at the papers, confused. Mom, what is this? I smiled faintly. It's her attempt to rewrite reality. He frowned. I don't know. I took the papers from Daniel's hands, slowly and deliberately. I unfolded them carefully, letting everyone watch. Let's examine this together, I said softly. Truth is always revealed under light. As I went through the papers, the manipulation became obvious. The emails were taken out of context. The receipts were altered. And the contracts she had shown were missing key information. Her strategy had backfired spectacularly. By now, the extended family had gathered in the living room, sensing the tension. My calm, deliberate actions created a quiet authority in the room. She was trembling. Her confident demeanor had collapsed completely. Her desperation was visible to everyone. You see, I said quietly, when we hide the truth, we create illusions. But the truth always surfaces. She tried to speak, to interrupt, to defend herself. But her voice faltered. Each lie she had prepared unraveled before the evidence. Her humiliation was complete. The very thing she had tried to orchestrate, turning the family against me, had exposed her instead. Daniel looked at me, wide-eyed. I had no idea she had been planning this. I nodded. Yes, but now you see clearly. And it's better you see it now than later. She finally exploded in frustration, standing up abruptly. You ruined everything. I'll never forgive you for this. I remained calm. Yes, darling. And perhaps that is the lesson you needed. Later that evening, I discovered the final shock. Hidden among her documents were even older debts, long overdue. Loans she had taken out before our marriage, which she had concealed meticulously. She had hoped no one would ever find them, and she had used the card to cover them subtly. I realized something critical. Her manipulation was not just recent, it was a pattern. A lifetime of deceit, carefully hidden behind charm and control. I decided then, the next step would be complete exposure. No subtle hints. No private confrontations. The family needed to see everything. The debts, the lies, the manipulations, so there would be no room for doubt. The next morning, I gathered Daniel and the extended family. Everyone. I began, calm but firm. I have something important to share. It concerns honesty, trust, and the choices we make in a family. Her eyes widened. She realized what was about to happen. Panic flashed across her face. I presented the documents, all of them. Receipts, statements, emails, loans. Everything she had tried to hide. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand gently. Please let the truth speak for itself. As we went through the documents together, the reality became undeniable. Her manipulations, her secret debts, her attempts to control perceptions, they were all laid bare. The room fell silent. Even she could not deny the evidence. Finally, she slumped in her chair, defeated and humiliated. Her plans to control, manipulate, and rewrite reality had completely backfired. Daniel looked at me, still shocked. I can't believe it. All this time. I nodded. It's better to know the truth now than to live with lies later. By the end of the day, one thing was clear. Her desperate betrayal had failed. Her lies had been exposed. And her attempts to humiliate me had only revealed her own deception. I realized an important truth that night. Some battles aren't won with anger. They are won with calm, deliberate, and undeniable truth. And when the truth is revealed, humiliation becomes its own punishment. I thought I had seen the full extent of my daughter-in-law's manipulations, but that Sunday morning proved me wrong. The air in the house was thick with anticipation. Daniel had left early for work, and I was finishing breakfast quietly, trying to focus on my routine. Then I heard the sound I had come to recognize, the click of her heels, deliberate and echoing, approaching the living room. She emerged, holding a small stack of papers and a pen. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, carefully modulating her voice to sound calm and reasonable. Her eyes betrayed a storm beneath the surface, desperation, fear, and something I had not yet seen. Panic. I nodded slowly. "Of course. Let's talk. Honestly, what is it this time?" She smiled, forcing warmth. I just want to clear the air. I've made mistakes, yes, but I think we can find a solution together." I raised an eyebrow, calm as ever. "Solutions require honesty, darling. And honesty requires accountability. Do you understand that?" Her smile faltered for a brief second. "Yes, I think so," she said, almost a whisper. Then came her desperate move, the last attempt to regain control. She handed me a stack of papers, contracts, bills, even a notebook with what appeared to be meticulous notes. "I've been honest about everything here," she said, her tone soft but urgent. "You'll see that I'm not the problem. You're making me out to be something I'm not." I took the papers slowly, letting her attempt at manipulation speak for itself. As I flipped through them, the truth became clear. Yes, some of it was real. Small debts, minor oversights, but much of it had been carefully crafted to confuse and manipulate. Receipts were altered. Emails were taken out of context. Notes were written to cast me as the villain. Her panic grew as she realized I could see through it. You're impossible. You've ruined everything," she shouted. I remained calm, folding my hands in front of me. "No, darling. You've revealed everything about yourself, and the truth has spoken." Then came the shocking revelation I hadn't anticipated. Her past. Buried in the stack of papers was a letter from a former landlord, warning about unpaid rent and previous financial irresponsibility. A copy of a credit report from years ago, showing multiple loans she had taken and defaulted on. I took a deep breath, realizing the full scope. She hadn't just hidden debts in our household. She had a pattern of deception spanning years, and she had tried to bury it beneath charm, manipulation, and carefully constructed lies. Her face went pale as I calmly read excerpts aloud. Missed payments, false claims of income, attempts to manipulate landlords, and ongoing debt obligations. Even she couldn't deny it. Her confident posture collapsed, replaced by trembling shoulders and darting eyes. You're reading private information," she hissed. I looked at her calmly, my voice soft but firm. "Darling, this information is relevant. Your history explains your manipulations, your desperation, and your attempts to control our household. It's not private, it's the truth." Daniel returned from work early, sensing something was wrong. He stepped into the living room just in time to witness the confrontation. "Mom, what's happening?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I smiled faintly. "Darling, the truth is finally visible. She has been trying to manipulate us for years, using charm, deceit, and selective honesty. And now it is all laid bare." Her panic turned into fury. "No, you can't do this. I've changed. You're destroying me." I shook my head slowly. Change is meaningless without honesty, and destruction comes only from deception, not from truth. The extended family arrived shortly after, sensing the tension. As I calmly explained her manipulations, past debts, and ongoing patterns of deceit, her confidence collapsed completely. Every attempt to manipulate perceptions, every desperate alliance she had tried to build, it had all crumbled. She finally shouted, voice breaking, You've ruined me." Everyone will think I'm terrible. I smiled faintly, knowing the truth is often more powerful than anger. Yes, everyone will see the real you. And perhaps this will finally teach you the lesson you've been avoiding for years. By the end of the evening, her humiliation was complete. Her desperate attempts to control, manipulate, and hide her past had completely backfired. Daniel looked at me, shocked and finally understanding the full scope. I can't believe how much she's been hiding. I never realized. I nodded. It's better you realize now than later. And it's better she faces the consequences before it's too late. That night, I reflected on everything that had happened. The card incident, the dinner showdown, the hidden debts, the desperate alliances, and now her past revealed. It was clear that she had underestimated me completely. And in underestimating me, she had exposed herself to the most powerful force in any household: truth, calm authority, and accountability. I realized something else. Desperation is a dangerous weapon, especially when it blinds a person to reality. She had allowed fear, envy, and jealousy to dictate her actions, and in doing so, she had revealed everything she wanted to hide. The final lesson of Chapter 9 was undeniable. Truth is relentless. Manipulation cannot stand against honesty, and no amount of charm, deception, or desperation can hide what is meant to be revealed. I smiled faintly as I watched her sit in silence, defeated and exposed. The battle was far from over, but she had no choice left but to face the consequences of her actions. And for the first time, I felt the calm satisfaction of knowing the truth had won. The house was quiet that morning. Too quiet. After the revelations of the past days, the card, the dinner showdown, the exposed debts, the desperate alliances, and the unveiling of her past, my daughter-in-law had retreated. I could feel the storm that had been brewing for months had finally broken. Daniel was sitting in the living room, looking pale but calm. I still can't believe it," he whispered. "Everything, all the lies, all the manipulations." I nodded, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Now you see clearly, Daniel. The truth is always revealed eventually. And the sooner we face it, the stronger we become as a family." She appeared from the guest room, her movements hesitant, almost cat-like. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. Gone was the confident, manipulative woman who had tried to control everyone around her. "This isn't over," she whispered, voice trembling with anger and desperation. "You haven't seen the last of me." I smiled faintly. "Perhaps. But today, you will face the consequences of your actions, and we will do it together as a family." She sank into the sofa across from me, trembling. Her attempts at charm, manipulation, and alliances had all failed. Even Daniel, who had once been swayed by her subtle tactics, now looked at her with clear understanding. I don't know what to say," Daniel muttered. You lied and hid things from us, from everyone." Her hands trembled as she tried to speak. I just wanted, I didn't mean to." I held up a hand. "Intentions don't erase consequences. You made choices, and now you must live with them." Then came the most shocking revelation. Among her old papers, receipts, and emails, I found something I had not expected. A secret she had been hiding about Daniel's family inheritance. She had been trying, subtly and carefully, to position herself as the primary beneficiary, manipulating the situation to appear indispensable, to make Daniel dependent on her control. Her face went white as I laid it out for Daniel. "These documents, these emails, they show your intentions, the hidden plans, the manipulations aimed to benefit yourself." Daniel's hands trembled. I had no idea." She sank lower in the sofa, silent, realizing her game had collapsed completely. I looked around at the family, who had gathered quietly. The atmosphere was tense but expectant. "I think it's time everyone understands what has been happening," I said softly. "And perhaps this will be the final lesson she needs to learn." I began recounting everything: the card, the debts, the hidden loans, the manipulations at dinner, the alliances she tried to form, and finally, the secrets from her past. As I spoke, her face alternated between panic, disbelief, and shame. Then came the ultimate twist. She had been planning to take a hidden loan out in my name, using old documents she had tried to manipulate months ago. The loan would have been executed while we were all distracted, leaving the family financially exposed. I had discovered it just in time. I showed Daniel the papers, the application, and her notes. His jaw dropped. You really tried to do this," he whispered, horror in his voice. She couldn't deny it. She was cornered completely. Her last desperate attempt at justification came as a whisper. I was only trying to protect our future." I shook my head slowly. "No, darling. You were trying to control it for yourself." Tears streamed down her face as the weight of her actions finally hit her. She had tried everything: charm, manipulation, alliances, deception, and finally, desperation. And now, the truth had dismantled her entire strategy. Daniel looked at her, voice calm but firm. I can't ignore everything you've done, but I also want to believe people can change." She looked at him with hope, fleeting but real. But the truth was undeniable. I spoke gently. "Change is possible, but only with honesty and accountability. And that begins with accepting the truth, not hiding from it." She bowed her head, finally silent, realizing there was no further escape. For the first time, she saw the power of calm authority and truth. Then, a shocking final twist. Among the old receipts and hidden loans, I found a note from her own mother, warning her about past manipulations, patterns of deceit, and the consequences of trying to control situations dishonestly. She had hidden it all, thinking no one would ever find it. But truth always finds a way. I held it up gently. "Even your mother saw the pattern," I said softly. "Perhaps now you do too." Her face crumpled, tears streaming freely. Daniel finally spoke, voice filled with quiet authority. I think we need to rebuild, but this time with honesty. No more secrets. No more manipulation. If we do this, it has to be together as a family." She nodded slowly, finally silent, knowing the weight of her actions had been fully revealed. That night, the house was quiet again, but this time calm. I reflected on everything that had happened. The card incident, the dinner humiliation, the desperate alliances, the exposure of her past, the shocking revelation about inheritance, and the hidden loan. And I realized the ultimate lesson. Manipulation cannot withstand truth. Deception cannot survive exposure. And desperation without accountability is powerless. As I watched her quietly in the living room, I smiled faintly. The battle was over, but the lesson would remain with her forever. And yet, in that silence, I knew one thing. The next chapter in our lives might bring challenges, but we had learned the power of honesty, truth, and boundaries. And nothing, no deception, no manipulation, no desperate attempt could ever take that away.